The rain hammered the tin roof of the vacation house, turning the night into a symphony of drips and groans. Crickets outside church chirped stubbornly through the storm, and every so often a branch slapped against the siding as if knocking to be let in. Inside, the chaos had its own rhythm. Mia, with her curls bouncing, was racing down the hallway in her pajamas, a blanket tied around her shoulders like a cape. Malik, ever the mastermind at 8, crouched low with his flashlight, plotting his ambush. Their giggles echoed through the big house like a ghost of mischief. Dinah leaned against the wooden banister, half laughing and half exasperated. "Vacation in the hills of Ohio," she murmured. "And this is what we get? A thunderstorm and 2 wild animals," referring to her children. Philip smiled, the kind of smile that made Dinah's chest tighten despite the domestic chaos. He moved closer, brushing past her with just enough for the fabric of her sleeve to stir. Her heart skipped, though she masked it with a sigh. Then came the creak of another door opening down the hall. Dinah stiffened. Philip tilted his head, listening. But instead of menace, it was Mia, squealing as if Malik jumped out with his flashlight, sending her sprinting straight into her father's arm. "Caught you. Daddy's safe zone," she cried, clutching Philip's shirt. From the corner, the nanny appeared, balancing a tray of cocoa. Her eyes lingered too long on Philip, her smile just a shade too sweet. Dinah noticed. Oh, she noticed, but she let it pass, though her grip on the banister tightened. The storm pressed harder against the window. Another knock, this one real. so real it rattled the front door. The children went silent, wide-eyed. Philip sat Mia down gently and stepped forward, his broad frame filling the hallway as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. The nanny's breath hitched audibly. Dinah's pulse quickened, not only from the storm or the knock, but from the way Philip's hand brushed hers on the way to the door. A spark, a reminder. The children peeked from behind Dinah's skirt, whispering theories. It's a monster. No, it's the rain. Their whispers colliding with the house's creaks and groans. Fabric rustled, hearts raced, and the mix of suspense and play, the line between comedy, danger, and desire. Blurred deliciously. The knock came again, this time harder. The old vacation house shuddered, as though the hills themselves wanted in. Mia squeaked and dove under Dinah's robe, clutching her leg like a lifetime line. Malik, flashlight still in hand, puffed out his chest. Don't worry, Mom. I'll protect you. He clicked the beam on and off dramatically, but it only made the storm shadows leap across the walls in unsettling shapes. Philip reached for the handles, his shoulders out taut. Dinah's pulse thrummed with equal parts fear and desire. Fear of the unknown visitor, desire for the man who moved with such calm strength in the middle of chaos. The nanny lingered behind them with a tray of cocoa still in hand. She tilted her head, her gaze fixed on Philip's back. The way his shirt clung to his body and the dim light made her lips part slightly. She wasn't watching the door. She was watching him, Philip. Dinah saw it. Oh, she felt it. A spark of possessive heat rose in her chest, clashing with the storm outside. Philip pulled the door open, just when a branch snapped loose. banging against the frame like a prankster. He secured it quickly, rain spotting his shirt before he shut the door tight again. When he turned, the nanny was already there, offering him cocoa. Her hand brushed against his, a little too intentionally. "You must be chilled," she said softly, eyes bright with something more than concern. Dinah's eyes narrowed, though she kept her tone light. "Funny, I don't see you offering me cocoa first." Malik giggled at the tension he didn't quite understand. Mia peeked out from behind Dinah's robe and whispered, "Mommy's jealous." The nanny flushed, but smiled as if she hadn't been caught. Stepping back with practice, Philip gave a polite nod. Obvious, or pretending to be. The storm raged harder, thunder rolling so loud the whole house seemed to quake. The lights flickered, then steadied, casting long shadows across the floor. The children huddled closer. Philip sat his mug down and slipped an arm around Dinah's waist. The move was subtle and protective, but enough to make her skin prickle with heat. Enough to remind the nanny and the storm that she was the woman he held when the night grew dangerous. And as another door creaked open upstairs, on its own, the whole family froze, suspended between fear, laughter, and the charged undercurrent of desire no storm could wash away. At last, the storm softened to a steady patter on the roof. The children, worn out from the laughter, flashlight battles, and cocoa-fused sprints through the hallways, finally collapsed into their beds. Mia clutched her stuffed rabbit, Malik still muttering with monsters as sleep pulled him under. Dinah tucked them in with practiced tenderness, smoothing Mia's curls, pressing a kiss against Malik's forehead. Philip lingered at the doorway, his frame filling the space with quiet strength. He caught Dinah's eye over the children's head, and something wordless passed between them, a promise, a memory, a hunger, desire. When the door clicked shut, the house seemed to sigh. The crickets outside picked up their song again. Somewhere another branch scraped against the siding. The house sounded deliberate as fingers dragging over a glass. Dinah walked past Philip, the fabric of her nightdress brushing against him. He reached, catching her wrist lightly, holding her in the hallway shadows. Her heart skipped, every nerve awake. "They're asleep," he murmured, His voice was low, roughened by restraint. She leaned closer, breath catching as his lips gazed hers. Not yet a kiss, just enough to make the air sizzle. A storm might have passed, but this was the real thunder. Unseen down the hall, the nanny paused. She had come upstairs under the pretense of checking the windows, but her steps slowed when she heard voices. She heard the hush of intimacy in them. She lingered, clutching the railing, heat rising through her chest and face. Breath quickened as Philip's tone shifted from protective father to hungry man. Inside the room, Dinah gasped softly as Philip pressed against the wall, his hand sliding onto her waist. Her groan whispered against his fingers, fabric moving with rhythm, their bodies leaning closer. Heart Hold on, y'all, I'm sorry. Hearts beat hard enough to drown out the storm remnants. The nanny closed her eyes, straining to hear more desire curling in her belly. She imagined herself in Dinah's place. Imagined Philip's lips on her skin, his weight pinning her down. Every sigh she overheard deepened her craving. But in the room, Philip's touch belonged wholly to Dinah. Their kiss deepened. All the tension of the storm poured into it. Her nails scraped lightly at his shirt, pulling him closer, grounding herself in the man who was hers. And still, just beyond the door, the nanny listened, flushed, breathless, caught between guilt and the thrill of forbidden longing. She longed for Philip. She wished he was his. The hallway had gone still except for the soft pattern of rain. Inside their bedroom, Dinah let out a trembling sigh. Philip's mouth found hers fully this time. No hesitation left. His kiss was deep, hungry. The storm he'd held back finally breaking free. Her groan slid against her skin as his hands explored her curves, fabric shifting with every movement. Dinah's pulse raced, every touch making her arch closer, every breath stolen from her lips sending fire through her veins. Philip pressed her gently onto the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. The window rattled with wind, crickets outside singing like an audience to their forbidden symphony. Dinah clutched at his shoulders, pulling him down, the sound of their bodies moving together, lost in the storm. It meant to linger this long, but now the sounds held her captive. The soft gasp, the creak of the bed, the muffled moan, Dinah couldn't contain herself. Heat pooled in her chest, lower until her breath became shallow and ragged. She pressed her palm against the doorframe, leaning in as though proximity alone could make her a part of it. Her eyes fluttered shut, imagination filling with what she couldn't see. Philip's lips moving lower, Dinah's whispered plea, the deep rumbling of his voice as he answered her need. Inside, Dinah arched beneath him, her body trembling under his devotion, his voice breaking in small, breathless cries. Philip's touch was both tender and unrelenting, every movement carrying the weight of a man who adored her, who claimed her. The nanny bit her lip hard, torn between guilt and aching desire. She wanted to pull away, but she couldn't. Each sound pulled her deeper into the longing. Her fantasy sharpened until it felt real. Philip's lips moving down her throat, lingering at the curve of her breast, before taking her nipple between his teeth, tugging until she gasped. She imagined his hands spreading her thighs, his fingers digging in possessively, his heat pressing against her until she ached with the need to surrender. The muffled creak of the bed sent her trembling. She pictured Philip entering her slowly, stretching her open, his chest against hers, his breath hot in her ear as he whispered her name. No longer Dinah's, but hers. She closed her eyes, biting her lip to stifle a sound as her own body betrayed her. One hand clutched the rail, the other slid lower, desperate amongst the trembling. Each moan, she overheard fanned her fantasy brighter. His thrust deeper, his pace stronger, her body arching into his with abandon. Inside, Philip groaned, a sound so raw it made her shudder. She pictured herself crying out beneath him, raking her nails in his back, begging for more, for harder. When Dinah's cry of release filled the air again, the nanny's knees began to buckle. In her mind, with her voice echoing, her body writhing under Philip's power, the pulse of forbidden desire crashed through her, leaving her flushed, trembling, undone. She dragged in a shaky breath, forcing herself to pull back from the door before someone noticed. As she padded slightly down the hallway, every nerve still thrummed. She knew she'd carry this ache for Philip, this fantasy of belonging to him, for as long as the storm lived in her memory. The house had fallen quiet again. Philip's groans, Dinah's cry, the rustle of fabric, all of it faded into heavy silence that pressed against the walls. The nanny stood frozen in the hallway, her chest rising and falling as though she had run a mile. Her skin burned, her thighs trembled, but beneath the flush of forbidden release, something sharper, an ache that wasn't satisfied. She closed her eyes, replaying what she'd heard. But each time she imagined Dinah in Philip's arms, a pang of envy twisted through her chest. It wasn't fear. Dinah didn't notice the way Philip's smile could warm a room. She didn't appreciate the weight of his voice when he spoke softly. She wasted it. She took him for granted. The nanny's hands lingered against her own lips, imagining his kiss, rough and hungry. Her mind painted the picture differently now. Dinah asleep in the room, forgotten, while Philip turned to her instead, choosing her, needing her, so vivid in her imagination. She stepped away from the door slowly, carefully, not to creak the floorboards, but her eyes glinted with something restless. Each thunderclap outside had passed, but the storm in her chest only grew. Someday, she whispered to herself, fingers curling against the banister. He'll see me. He'll see me someday. He has to. From downstairs, a floorboard popped, the old house shifting. The nanny smiled faintly in the dark, the sounds feeding her secret conviction. It was as if the old house itself approved, conspiring her secrets to let her hunger grow. As she moved back to her own room, the taste of her fantasy still thick on her tongue. She carried it with her like a weapon, like a promise. Sooner or later, Philip would be hers. Morning came amidst the rolling through the hills, the house wrapped in a damp hush after the storm. Dinah padded into the kitchen in her robe, hair tied loosely, still glowing faintly from the night before. Philip was already there, making coffee, strong and quiet, the way he always did. The nanny appeared moments later, cheerful with children. But her eyes found Philip first. They lingered longer than polite, longer than safe. "Good morning," she said, voice light but warm, enough to melt butter. She brushed past him to reach for a cup, the hem of her dress brushing his thigh. It could have been an accident, but Dinah's eyes narrowed in at the motion. Malik was too busy stacking pancakes onto a tower. Mia giggled as syrup dripped down her chin. Family chaos filled the room, yet beneath it pulsed a quiet triangle of tension. Later, when Dinah took the children to play in the rain-damp yard, the nanny lingered inside under the pretense of tidying. Philip was at the table with his laptop open, scrolling through work. She set her hand lightly on the back of the chair, leaning close enough that he could hear and smell her perfume. "You work too much on vacation," she murmured, her voice low enough not to carry outside. "A man like you should rest." Philip gave a polite smile, shifting slightly, creating space. "Thank you, but I'm fine," said Philip. Her hand lingered a moment too long before pulling back. Inside her heart pounded, not from rejection, but from the thrill. She was testing boundaries. The game itself excited her. That night, when Dinah settled the children into bed, the nanny drifted past Philip again in the hallway. She let her hand graze the doorframe, her eyes meeting his with a look that said far more than the words ever could. Just for a second, her lips parted, as though to confess something forbidden. But then She smiled sweetly, like nothing had happened, and disappeared into her room. Behind the closed doors, her pulse thundered. She was no longer satisfied with listening, no longer content to imagine. She wanted Philip's eyes on her, his touch on her skin. In her mind, she began plotting the movement that would make him see her, not as the nanny, but as the helper, but as the woman he couldn't resist. It's time for me to flip pages and a little break, okay? Hey, Chelsea, my favorite snow bunny. Hey, Death Reaper and Wolfpack Man. Queen of Vibes, you still there? How's it going so far? Or do I need to make it more interesting? The hills stayed wet and foggy. The fog draped for days, the storm never fully leaving. The house became its own little island. Children's laughter upstairs, rain tapping against the windows, and the consistent smell of coffee and damp wood. But under the surface, something shifted. The nanny's smile grew sweeter, her touches braver. When she brushed Philip's shoulders while handing him a glass, her fingers lingered as if by accident. When she walked past him in the hall, her perfume trailed behind like an invasion. She never said anything improper, but the silences around her words carried weight. Dinah noticed. One afternoon, while the kids built forts in the living room, Dinah stepped into the kitchen to find the nanny bending just a little too close to Philip as he had opened a bottle of wine. Their laughter light hit easy like a knife. "Everything all right in here?" Dinah's voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. The nanny straightened, brushing hair from her face. A picture of innocence, of course. "I was just helping." Philip glanced between them, obviously or unwilling to see the sparks crackling. That night, Dinah couldn't shake the unease. When Philip pulled her close in their room, she kissed him harder, almost possessively, her body pressing into his as if to stake her claim. He groaned, surprised by the intensity, but gave himself to her, hands moving eagerly over her skin. Outside the door, the nanny passed with folded laundry. She paused, listening again, just as she had during the storm. Dinah's low moan, ah, followed by Philip's deep rumble. Her cheeks flushed. Her body tightened with desire. She imagined stepping inside. Imagined Dinah fading from the picture while she slipped into Philip's arm. The image was so vivid. Her breath caught. In her mind, she pictured Dinah watching powerlessly while Philip turned his focus fully on her, his hands pinning her, his mouth claiming her body, his body giving her what she dreamed of in the dark. By the time she retreated to her own room, her hands were trembling. It wasn't fantasy anymore. Y'all, it was need. The need of Philip to touch, kiss, and caress her. And as the rain picked up again, drumming steadily against the roof, she whispered into the dark, "She doesn't deserve him. I do." The rain drummed steadily against the roof. A lullaby to the sleeping house. Down the hall, the children were quiet. And behind Dinah and Philip's door, passion already burned itself into silence. But in her room, the nanny lay restless. She desired Philip's. She laid restless, hot, and wet. Sheets twisted around her legs, skin hot with the memory of what she overheard. Her female spot wet from fantasizing about Philip. Every sigh, every moan from Dinah and Philip replayed in her head until it blurred into something new, something that belonged to her alone. Her hand slid slowly over her body as her mind conjured up the fantasy. Philip slipping silently into her room instead of Dinah's. His shirt clinging damply from the rain, his eyes hungry as if they found her. In her imagination, she didn't hesitate. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her close against him, his mouth crashing down on hers, and she moaned. The taste was strong, intoxicating, and rough on her hips as he pressed her back into the mattress. She gasped into the empty room, arching, though he were really as though he were really there. His weight pinning her down. She pictured his mouth trailing lower over her throat, over her chest, his tongue circling her nipples until she shivered and moaned. Ah, ah, Philip, ah. Her legs spread with anticipation, sheets falling away as the fantasy sharpened. Philip pushing slowly, stretching, filling her until her body trembled with surrender. His breath hot against her ear, whispering that she was the one he wanted and the one he couldn't resist. She moved with the rhythm of her own imagining as the picture in her mind grew sharper, his body pressing harder into hers, her nails clawing his back, her voice breaking out into cries of pleasure. Ah, 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 ah. Relentless. When release finally came, it was fierce, tearing through her cry. She muffled against the pillow. Ah, 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 ah. For a moment, the storms outside seemed to echo. It thunder rolling low and heavy in the hills. Breathless, she lay trembling in the aftermath of her skin. Slick, her mind raw, her pulse slowed. So did her restraint. It wasn't just fantasy anymore. She was wet. She was tired. She was weak from imagining Philip. She wanted Philip. She needed him. And soon, she told herself, she'd find a way to make her fantasy real. The next morning, the hills were slick against the mist. The rain, only a memory, and the damp, clean scent of the house. The children were once again bouncing through the hallways, a chaotic soundtrack of giggles and squeals. The nanny moved through the house with a practiced smile, but every gesture was calculated. She lingered in fraction too long while helping Philip pour coffee, letting her hand brush his. She leaned in when he read the morning paper, standing close enough for him to catch the warmth of her presence. Careful, she murmured, her voice soft and almost conspiratorial. That mug's heavy. Don't spill it on yourself. Philip gave a polite smile, muttering, obvious to the heat in her tone. When the children ran ahead to the deck, the nanny followed slowly, letting her dress cling just to her a little, teasing in the morning sun. She knew Philip's eyes were on her. She let them linger, allowing her just enough time to ignite a flicker of tension before pulling it back. Innocent but deliberate. She found herself in the hallway outside the master bedroom, hearing Philip's deep voice calling for Dinah. She leaned casually against the wall, a faint smile on her lips, imagining what it feel like to be the one summoned instead. His hand smoothed the fabric of her dress, her pulse quickening. She had to be careful, subtle, strategic. But each small brush, each chance to catch his attention felt like a step closer to making her fantasy real. Even when she smiled at Dinah, helped the children with breakfast, or she straightened pillows on the couch, there was tension beneath her ease, a quiet plotting. Every look, every gesture was loaded. Every moment was spent near Philip became a practice, a rehearsal for the day she could not stop imagining and started acting. As the rain returned lightly, pattering against the window, she whispered to herself, "Soon he'll be mine, and what he does, he won't be able to resist." The mist clung to the hills like a veil. I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot to stop my pages from turning. The mist clung to the hills like a veil as morning unfolded. The children ran through the house, squealing and laughing. The nanny moved with careful, fluid grace, always near Philip. At breakfast, she poured his coffee before anyone else, hands brushing his just enough to make him flinch lightly. "Hot," she murmured, leaning in just enough to let her hair fall against his shoulder. The tone was casual, almost accidental, but the weight behind it was deliberate. Philip blinked at her, distracted, as the syrupy chaos of the children's pancakes continued around them. Dinah didn't notice. She was busy chasing Malik from a syrup spill. If the nanny is there, why didn't the nanny get the syrup spill? Later, when Philip retreated to his laptop, the nanny volunteered to help him organize his work, moving papers around, lingering in his personal space. She offered small touches, tapping him on his arm with a pen, brushing against his sleeve as she leaned over to point at the screen. Every brush of skin was a test, every smile a subtle challenge. Philip responded politely, professional, but a flicker of awareness crossed his feature each time. Midday, the children ran outside to play with the rain puddles. The nanny followed more slowly, letting her gaze linger on Philip. She smiled softly, brushing her hair from her face and letting her dress cling lightly from the damp air. "It's chilly," she said casually, yet loaded. "You should warm up." He gave her a polite nod and went to change into dry clothes. But she imagined him turning towards her instead. In her mind, she felt the weight of his hands on her. She imagined him brushing the damp hair from her lips and hovering close enough to ignite fire. By afternoon, she was in the hallway outside the master bedroom when Philip called for Dinah. She pressed herself lightly against the wall, listening. imagining every whisper of his voice directed at her. Her pulse quickened. Each laugh or sigh from him and conversation became fuel for her fantasy, sharpening her need. Even as she helped the children with homework or straightened the living room, her eyes found Philip repeatedly. A fleeting glance, a brush of her fingers against his shoulder. Every action was casual on the surface, loaded underneath. By evening, the storm returned lightly. She prepared dinner beside him, leaning close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body, her perfume teasing his senses. Every movement was a step in a silent game, a slow escalation toward the movement. She would stop imagining and begin acting on her obsession. The children finally went to bed. The nanny paused outside their room, listening to Philip and Dinah's quiet chatter. Her breath hitched as she imagined herself instead of Dinah, feeling in his hands on her, his lips claiming her, his voice whispering her name. She retreated to her own room afterwards, heart racing, mind alive with fantasy she could no longer suppress. Every small gesture, every look, every accidental brush against Philip's skin had been a rehearsal. In the dark, she whispered to herself, "Soon, he'll see me, and when he does, he won't be able to resist." The nanny lay on her bed that evening, mind spinning with vivid fantasies of Phillips, her hand moving over her body as she imagined his lips, his hands, the weight of him pressing against her. The memory of the day's small touches, the warmth of brushing his fingers against hers on his shoulders, the warmth of his presence fed the fire inside her until it consumed every rational thought. Then outside of her window, the sound of rain softened into silence. Inside her room, Philip's voice, calm, controlled, cut through her reverie. "I think it's time," he said softly, just outside her door. The nanny froze, heart leaping. Her fantasies were real, or at least dangerously close. But Philip's tone carried no malice, only firmness. "I'm sending a car to take you and the children home," he continued. "We'll arrange for my mother to watch them, and we'll find a new nanny. Very clear about where my priorities lies." Her mind stumbled. She trapped between disappointment, shame, and the lingering ache of desire. Philip had seen the intensity in her eyes, the way she lingered a little too long, and he acted immediately, not out of anger, but out of love for Dinah and devotion for his family. Meanwhile, downstairs, Dinah had just come into the room. Philip met her eyes, calm and honest. "I think it's best if we call my mother to help with the children for the rest of the week," he explained. "And we'll find another nanny. I love you, and I am committed to you and our family. Nothing will compromise that." Donna felt a swell of relief, pride, and trust. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her heart full. Upstairs, the nanny packed the children's things quietly, cheeks flushed with shame of her unspoken desires. The children, obviously, too, the tension, chattered happily about the storm and the puddles. The cast one last glance at Philip's closed bedroom door, fantasy stirring, and felt the sting of the boundaries enforced. Moments later, the car arrived. Philip helped the children in first, smiling gently to keep the mood light before guiding the nanny to the door. She looked back once, longing and frustration mingling in her eyes, but didn't waver. The car pulled away. Philip turned to Dinah, wrapping his arms around her. Outside, the rain continued its gentle rhythm, washing the hills clean. Inside, the house felt safe again, a sanctuary where love, loyalty, and commitment held stronger than desire and temptation. And for the nanny, the drive home was quiet. Her fantasies lingered, unfulfilled, but boundaries were clear. The lesson, inedible. Some desires, no matter how consuming, were not hers to act upon. The end. Philip did it. He made it without ruining his marriage. Is anybody there? Put a 1 in the chat if you're still there. I guess everybody's gone. Well, thank you to all of you who joined the chat and listened to my story. Please leave a comment. Good night. You still there, Queen of Vibes? What did you think about the story? Was it boring? Was it not sultry enough?